people like ACP Ofori actually say that what happened there was unlawful because the people failed to notify the police to do that. Your thoughts on that, particularly around this time that we are trying to see our way clear after the 7th December elections?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning to all your listeners and viewers. I think we are in a very disturbing period in our democratic life. When I saw what was happening at the EC headquarters, as well as what has happened across the country, I think we've heard reports. I mean, even though we haven't seen footages like we saw at the EC headquarters, it just tells me that the countries that were once engulfed in a lot of insecurity and eventually civil wars in our neighborhood. You talk about perhaps countries like Cote d'Ivoire, countries like Liberia, countries like Sierra Leone. I think went through events like this, particularly when I think in the footage that we just saw, I heard that there was an ex-security, ex-police officer involved in the protest. Very disturbing, and I think we have to watch these events very, very carefully. We shouldn't delude ourselves and say, oh, we are a very peaceful country. I mean, that's what we Ghanaians like to always say. I mean, we are a very peaceful country, and what is happening in many places cannot happen in this country.
Right. Now, obviously, like you're saying, this is quite worrying, but Colonel Festus Obadje, sitting here as a security expert, what do you make of it? Are we playing with fire here?
Well, let's say good morning to you, to Doc, and Dr. Akwete also.
Good morning.
Generally, we as a people, as a society, as a country, have been playing with fire for a long time. The danger is what he said, that instead of admitting that little things are not being done right, and these could be sparks that could coalesce and, degenerate into a blaze. We keep saying that we are fine, we are a beacon of democracy, it's all fine, and yet, consistently, things are not going right with our elections. So let me come back to the Assembly. The Assembly, lawful and unlawful, is worrisome in a couple of respects. One, it could gain critical mass. Already it's nationwide. Mm-hmm. There is no indication that it's going to stop. So when it gains critical mass, the temptation will be for the state to now respond and probably use force that is disproportionate to the level of the violence. And then we end up with a situation of human rights, violations on our hands. In the case that he is alluded to, Liberia is always a good example. Where in 1979, they embarked on the rice riots because the price of rice had been increased. And the government of the day, Tolbert's government, unleashed the armed forces of Liberia, the Liberian National Police, and on top of that, Guinean troops who had no business, being involved in Liberia's internal affairs. The rest of the history is Master Sergeant Doe's coup, during which Tolbert was killed, and the rest of Liberia degenerating into. So we need to be very, very careful. It's good to have this conversation and reinforce what DCOP Kwesi Ofori has said on the ground, what Chief Superintendent Sheila Bachman said in a press release or press statement what the Minister of Interior has said. The NDC must deem it a responsibility to ensure that they exercise their freedom of expression, including assembly and demonstration, within the bounds of the law. Before and at the same time also call on the state not to think that because there is an unlawful demonstration, assuming that it is unlawful. I think this is a legal matter. I want to leave it there. That
So they didn't seek police. They did not to seek permission, but they didn't notify the police.
No.
And that was contrary to the Public Order Act.
My understanding is that an unlawful assembly is hinged on one determinant, cardinal determinant, and that is whether that assembly breaches the peace or not. It is not about whether you obtained, permission or you served notice. In this instance, not serving notice may be a violation of the law, but would that make it unlawful? I think lawyers can speak to that. But nevertheless, the context is that passions are now inflamed. So when passions are inflamed, you cannot, demand that people should be rational. We need to recognize that as a result of circumstances surrounding the opacity of the election results, some people find it difficult to accept the results. You see, so there are many sides. I will say, and let me say it again finally, NDC as a party must be responsible, to act within the law. And the state must be careful that it does not respond disproportionately. Then we need to also recall, and there's a point that I always make, that we cannot be selective in the administration of justice. Look, if the police could deal with this demonstration the way it is dealing with the demonstration, why didn't they deal with the episodes of violence, for instance? In one instance, they say, no, we didn't find the culprits, we are looking for them. When indeed they shot people on the ground, and 2 dropped dead, and 1 died subsequently, you say you can't find them. The Minister of State says that we don't know the people. So we are living in a democracy where the state doesn't know, in full glare of the public, who is going around and killing people during an electoral process. You see? So I want to see a police and institutions who would deal dispassionately with all cases of violations.
Right.
Not one in one instance, because it belongs to the opposition, you tend to be a bit high-handed, and then in other instances, you turn a blind eye to. We don't build a democracy like that, and we need to be very, very careful.
Very well. Right.
And that is the point you made, that we are toying or playing with fire.
Right. Dr. Dramani, you wanted to...
Yes, very quickly. I just wanted to add that, for those who have been observing the processes leading to December 7, I think we saw this coming. We couldn't deal with Ayawaso. The short report is still hanging somewhere. The 2 parties, I think, really never agreed or, dealt with the issue of vigilantism. We missed so many opportunities. And, this is the outcome that we get at this point.
Right. Very well. Let me switch to Dr. Akwete, who is on Zoom. Dr. Akwete, can you hear me?
I do.
Right. If you can turn on your video, please. Because we can't see you.
I can't see you. You want to see me, but I don't see you.
We can see you now.
Also, I want to see my colleagues. I want to.
Yes.
So I feel,
I'm sure we can sort that out, in the course of the program. But
please let them
it's great to have you. It's great to have you. I know that the IDEC CFI has issued a statement urging or encouraging the NDC to seek redress in court. And there's been a response of sorts indicating that, yes, they are very much aware of their right to go to court, but they also, can engage in the protest that they are engaging. But it turns out that the protest that they're engaging in, at least the one that occurred on Thursday, was without notice to the police. and thereafter caused a number of issues, which has brought us to this point of this discussion. Let us have your thoughts and let us have an understanding of where we are at currently and how or what the implications are moving forward.
Thank you very much. If it's true that NDC members embarked on this demonstration without notifying the police, I think that is wrong. And NDC has been government of this country, in fact, governed the longest time. And they know that they made these laws and they should comply, because resort to the street always carries the danger of violence, outbreak of violence. And violence will not only happen on one side. Others would counter it, the opposing side. They know that, and I like the point that my dear friend Amani made and said, we know we are in armed vigilante times. Vigilante laws have been passed. In the law, they were supposed to disarm vigilantes. NDC said they've disarmed their vigilante, which was a gesture of compliance and not wanting violence. And they said they are committed to peaceful elections. And that's what we've heard. That's what we've heard from President Mahama. Not one life, must be wasted because of elections and so on. On the other hand, we also know that they are pretty much dissatisfied with the police. But I find, and dissatisfied also with the courts. And because of this satisfaction or lack of confidence, they are now not contacting the police, but resort asking their members, or their members are free to get onto the streets. So the question is, where is leadership? Where are we headed? I have a publication of on 18 December 2012, when Haruna Judicial, then Minister of Communication, and Gabi Asari Ochredakon had a program, I think, on Metro. And there it says, I can send it to you in studio.
Okay.
The communication minister was clear. He said, that's Haruna Judicial. He challenged the leaders of the opposition New Patriotic Party to take their grievances to court, if indeed they are confident and that their figures will support their case. MPP should stop demonstrating against the election's outcome, which it claims was characterized by fraud, and instead take their grievances to court. This was in 2012.
Deja vu.
And we went through the court processes and so on. But I think, is it that when you are in opposition, you should not denigrate the court, not resort to the court, especially as you've committed to do so? And when you are in government, then you say, go to court, and so on and so forth. I think double standards and contradictory stance could not help. We are in a real dangerous time.
Right.
Because we know that there's armed vigilante. The police warned us in January 2019 at the New Year school that, hey, the armed vigilantes are growing, they are spreading. And I think in the last year in particular, NDC has also raised a lot of issues about armed vigilantes and infiltration and all that. So we have to be careful. I would have liked them at least to give notice to the police. In our statement, we said the rights, civil and political rights of members of the NDC to demonstrate must be recognized and respected. But it also has to be exercised within the law.
Exactly.
So that the police will provide them the protection they need, and agents provocateurs wouldn't get in and so on. In demonstrations, you always have people who may not even be related to the NDC getting in to cause havoc. That's what I mean by the agents of provocation, if I'll put it in English, who might get in and create all sorts of, because it gives a bad name. They might come from vigilantes, they might come from other security, or it's a mess. So you stop going onto the street. And I think at this stage, from what I'm gathering, the demonstration without notice to the police and the reactions and so on, and the constant refusal or the delay in saying we are going to court and calling your members out of the street, especially after you signed a peace pact, I think it's damaging. It's damaging to the international standing of President Mahama, especially because 2016, he conceded, and in spite of all his reservations, he also led ECOWAS to go to Gambia and deal with issues affecting elections and outcomes and acceptance of results. He was very critical, his role in Burkina Faso when the army intervened. And he was highly commended for that. And based on those stands, his international standing as a man who, in spite of everything, would hold on to the democratic principles and want peace and stability. He's been leading one mission after the other, okay, seeking peace and so on. So this stand has confused many. I mean, there have been calls from friends who are saying, what has led to this? This is the man we looked up to and so on and so forth.
But
so
Doc, if I may,
yes.
On that point, there are those who are saying that, well, this is a man who believes that something went wrong, and so he's not necessarily going to accept it. And that is the position he's taking. And so in that vein, there are those who are asking that, is he at all costs supposed to accept the results just because he declared a certain intention going into the elections?
No, I think that what the expectation is that he has a right, and a legitimate right, to resist, not to accept the results. But when you don't accept the results, the precedent is that you go to court. And that's what the precedent that was set in 2012. It was difficult, but the leader of the MPP said, we prevailed on him. Actually, you see, it was soon after they signed the peace pact, and then they lost the elections, and their forces were, massing, gathering at Obrasport. And a lot of pressure was put on the MPP. So you had the late Jacob Echivilamte going on radio and going into that space and telling them, go home. We are not in support of this. We can't even take care of you. We decided to go to court. Okay, and he prevailed on them and they left. So there were attempts to demonstrate and so on, but you did not see that as linked to the leadership. Okay, the presidential candidates, for instance. He said, I'm going to court. And they were even teased that, in this thing I read, they were teased that, hey, you said you're going to court, and it's taking you so long. So it's like the situation has flipped, okay? But what I'm saying is that President Mahama signed the peace pact. Himself and former President Mahama and current President Akufo-Addo, two of them have signed peace pacts on 3 occasions, 2012, 2016, 2020. The thing to do is, if you say you're going to court, go to court, but also keep your people off the street. As for me, they can demonstrate, but I thought the police must protect them. But if the police, I wondered why the police wasn't offering them protection to exercise their civil and political rights. They must protest against the behavior, or protesting against the behavior of the EC is understandable based on the information they have. But I think the police must protect them. Now, to hear that police said they didn't have maybe the NDC would clarify.
Right.
But the important thing we should note is that the incidence of violence in the countrywide, our democracy is not just a Ghanaian thing. It has high international status and recognition. It is used to whip others in line. And we've seen how Ghana has mediated in very serious conflicts, not only in civil war, even in the democratic contestations. So it is creating some worry. In fact, internationally, it is shaking the place that, hey, is Ghana going down? And I think the NDC, if indeed they want to go to court, they acted. That would be good.
Very well.
I think the anger has to be expressed, but if they didn't call the police, are they also saying that they don't have confidence in the police? They have issues with the police. Of course, those who were killed, no investigation in the deaths that occurred during the registration, and then the vigilante violence that had occurred.
Right.
But if you don't believe in the police, it's still the state institution, and they themselves have been in charge of the police. I think we have to look at how to fix this problem. I think that it lies within the decision of the electorate, this decision the electorate has given us, to begin to tackle those problems.
Very well.
But for goodness sake, going to court and calling their people off the streets, especially if it doesn't involve police and there'll be violence and more injuries or deaths and so on, that shouldn't come from them.
Very well. Thank you, Dr. Akwete. Right. Also joining us via Zoom is Mr. Joseph Dindio Pemka. He is a Deputy Attorney General and MP for Timpani constituency. Mr. Pemka, are you there? Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, so we don't seem to get Mr. Pemka on there. So we'll move on. When he comes back, we'll definitely get back to him. But let me also announce that we're expecting Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh. He is the Executive Director of CDD Ghana. When he joins us, we'll do the needful as usual and introduce him as well. So, Dr. Dramani, quickly, Dr. Akwete in his submission indicated, a bit about going to court. And of course, that is what we all know would be, the best approach. At least we've seen events from the 2012 elections which led to the 2013 petition. And so that is a precedent we can definitely fall on. But the question is this. I presume, there's something that's been making the rounds on social media. It appears funny, but it should set us thinking. And let me just read it. I think you've come across it. That the stake they used to beat Techi at the Supreme Court in 2013 is lying at the Supreme Court waiting for Bar, so Bar doesn't want to go. So there's a certain perception that election results, the courts are reluctant to overturn election results. And you need to, go prove a certain level of invalidity to ensure that it is overturned. So that, the question as to whether or not the invalid votes that you're talking about, even if those were added to what you currently have, it would make any difference. So there's a perception that, people, why even go when you know that, or it's perceived that it wouldn't be overturned? So then you would want to resort to all sorts of things just to, as it were, mobilize your base, charge them up, and keep them going. What do you make of that?
Perhaps, maybe the NDC knows something that we don't know. Because, as you said, they were in court. They asked, Dr. Akwete just quoted the current minority leader who, in 2012, said the MPP should go to court. Maybe they know something that we don't know. And for me, I think this whole issue hinges on the kind of mistrust that we have of state institutions. Because like Dr. Akwete rightly said, the NDC was there. The NDC handled the police. They've been in government longer than, much longer than the MPP. They've dealt with the courts and so on. Yet, consistently what we see in this country is that, when a party is in power, it trusts the state institutions.
Yep.
But as soon as it gets out of power and is in opposition, there's a lot of mistrust. Because today we are in a situation where the NDC, if what we are hearing is true, doesn't seem to trust the police. Because if you get up, as we are hearing, and start going to demonstrate without the necessary notification. Yeah. I think it presupposes that what you are saying is that you don't trust that institution, and there's really no need to go and seek that get that notification. And for me, I think the issue is also that whilst the NDC leadership has a responsibility to call its supporters to order, and then to ensure that we could have some peaceful demonstrations. In instances where passions are inflamed, in instances where people are really pained, as we see with these election results, it's going to be very difficult to have peaceful demonstrations. Either, as Dr. Akwete said, you can have some agent provocateur who would come in and let you look bad, or really some of the members of the NDC who are protesting would want to say, because we live in a country where it is either you have all the power or you have nothing, let's just destroy everything and then we both have nothing. So if I go into the minds of some of these demonstrators, I think that these are some of the things that might be going through. But I want to get back again to our standing in the world of nations, particularly in the West African sub-region. As Dr. Kwete said, our democracy is not the democracy for Ghana alone.
Right.
Because I do a lot of work in different countries. I was recently in Burkina Faso, during the elections and so on and so forth. And they hold Ghana in very high esteem. Somebody told me that they've never seen a country that has been given access to the presidency in Burkina Faso more than Ghana. That any envoy who comes from Ghana and wants to see the president gets access immediately. Not very many countries are given that access. And I think it goes back to the role that our country played, to the role that President Mahama played when they had the crisis and when they went through a very difficult situation in their democratic history. And that's a very important reminder. In 2014, of course, theirs was not election, but it was something that has to do with the trust in state institutions. Right. Parliament at the time was not trusted. A constitutional clause was changed. Citizens went out and banned the parliament, and they said, we are looking for the MPs to ban them.
Wow.
This can happen here.
Sure.
So really we are playing with fire, and we have to be careful. We have a responsibility. There's a responsibility on government to handle this very carefully, because government controls the coercive state powers that exist. But at the same time, I think the opposition also has to remember that, this is not the last elections that we are going to have in this country. There are many more elections that are coming, and people are going to be judging, people are going to be, monitoring every single kind of action that the leadership of the NDC takes during this critical period. And if the country descends into chaos, I think the NDC would have more of the blame, I believe, than the MPP, because of the fact that, as history has shown us, the MPP went to court. So now, I think the other side is bound by the precedent that has been set.
Well, which is where you raise the question about the level of, maybe distrust for state institutions, and if that is why we are seeing this, kind of behavior ahead of. But let's not forget, though, that they do have some 21 days from the date of declaration. So at least until the 21 days are up, we can't necessarily conclude that they won't go. Maybe they are preparing. Who knows?
You see, that's the other challenge in terms of our democratic arrangements. We do things in this country in a very haphazard manner. I know Dr. Kwete was involved, and some of us were involved in the Transition Act and so on and so forth. Look at the time that we have. We were just discussing this earlier. Look at the time that we have. Many people thought that, given some of the experiences that we've had in the past, like 10 and instances where we've had like 2 or 3 kind of runoffs, and time was really very tight. Many would have thought that by now, as a country, we would sit down and say, look, based on all these history and what we are learning, perhaps if we cannot shift inauguration because of maybe a crisis that might be created constitutionally, at least we can bring forward the elections to, November and so on. And then that gives us enough time for all this. Look at what's happening in the U.S. They've gone to court several times in different states and so on and so forth. because they have a little bit of time, more than we do.
Right.
The results were gazetted just last week, or is it this week? And we still have, as Professor Prempe said in a post yesterday, some constituency even where people have not been able to vote, or there's no representation. What kind of country are we?
That's a good question we need to ponder on.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Peter.
Please, just a quick something Deputy Attorney General has said, Minister of Justice and Attorney General, which I think is important.
He's actually joined us, so we'll be getting to him as well, but please carry on.
Okay, resorting to the courts and the streets are not done jointly, unless you can guarantee that demonstration in the street will be peaceful. Usually there are options. The two don't go together, simply because on the street you can't control the tens or hundreds of thousands of the people and their passions. So when you say don't resort to the street, it's ultimately you're talking to the possibility of violence breaking up, not so much peaceful demonstration. And if you need peaceful demonstration, then you need really the police and all things to show that civil and political rights are respected. But in this case, if violence breaks out, as in Kenya, when they didn't trust the courts in 2007, because they said the Electoral Commission cannot be trusted, is declared the results for Kibaki and so on, and the Chief Justice also attended the ceremony of swearing in Kibaki, so they wouldn't go to court, and they went to the streets. That is what the violence became. Right. So you have to take that choice. They don't go together. They are not complementary.
Very well.
They are contradictory, as a matter of fact.
Even if the protests were done lawfully.
But lawfully and peacefully. Lawfully and peacefully.
Sure.
Yes.
Very well.
You can't say it's lawful and violence, because the law doesn't justify violence.
Definitely
unless it's a rebellion.
Right.
Then you can have to realize and so on.
Abna, just very quickly, just to add maybe one other point to the mix, so that when you have the Attorney General, perhaps he could help us.
Sure.
We talked about precedent in 2012. The court electoral, settling the electoral dispute and so on. Now, apart from that, what we are hearing, unless maybe I don't understand, because I'm not a lawyer, I don't understand these processes quite well. What we are hearing is that at the parliamentary level, the NDC is saying we are going to court and we are going to challenge some results. And yet, on the other hand, they don't want to go to court on another, You mean
on the presidential?
Yes, the presidential. So I don't know whether...
Well, they haven't categorically said they won't go to court on the presidential. What has come through is that they know what they need to do. They are very much aware of their right to seek redress in court in respect of the presidential as well. You do remember that Mr. Mahama, when he was addressing the state, I believe on the 10th, did indicate that they were constituting a team of lawyers to deal with the situation. So for now, we can't categorically say that they have, decided not to go to court in terms of the presidential. Like I said, they still have within 21 days to do, and the 21 days are still not up yet.
But the point I'm making is that if we have heard all the pronouncements that we are going to challenge some parliamentary results in court, one would have expected that we hear the same with regards the presidential. If indeed, we know that the court is the avenue for seeking redress when it comes to, some of these differences.
Very well.
That's just the point.
Very well.
I'm
now,
making.
I'll come to you quickly. Let me take this story though. We talked about the protests in Accra, but let's do know that supporters of the opposition National Democratic Congress protested in the northern region as well, and they protested the 2020 presidential election results, of which President Akufo-Addo was declared winner. The protesters called on the Electoral Commission chairperson, Jean Mensah, to correct the anomalies and declare their candidate, John Mahama, winner. We'll take some footage in respect of that, and then we will come to the studio. I'll have Colonel Festus Abaju's take.
NDC supporters hit the principal streets of Tamale to protest the outcome of the 2020 presidential results. They also burnt lorry tires to register their displeasure.
This country is a peaceful country. If Nana Akufo-Addo lost election, was I should go away. He should go. We Nigerians are ready. Let Nana Akufo-Addo go. The country is a peaceful country.
Both the New Patriotic Party and the National Democratic Congress have won 9 seats each in the 18 constituencies of the Northern Region. Meanwhile, the Northern Regional Security Council, ahead of the protest, issued a statement indicating that the security will deal with any individual or group whose actions and inactions will mar the peace in the region.
Okay, so that was from the Northern Region, where, protesters also went out to protest. You saw again tires being burned amidst other things that were happening, still raising issues of concern. Colonel?
Yeah. There was a Prussian general in the 18th century, I think, or 19th century, no, 18th century, who said, that's Clausewitz, Karl von Clausewitz, that he was writing in some thesis on war, that the fact that war is dangerous must not compel us to turn our swords into plowshares. Because war is dangerous, we must invest in peace. Because the aftermath of elections could be risky and threaten the existence of the state. That is why we needed to be extra careful that we had a very free, fair, transparent elections. Now I'm of a different opinion that protest and resort to courts are compatible. When the Liberian peace process was going on here in Accra, M Plaza, I wasn't in the country, I was in South Africa. But Liberian women mobilized from Monrovia came to Accra and surrounded M Plaza, that until their leaders signed the peace, they wouldn't allow them to. That was protest. So the essential thing that all of us are emphasizing is that the protest must be peaceful.
That's it.
NDC cannot excuse itself if it resorts to violence. But we cannot say that because NDC is going to court, that should be the point where they terminate protest. My other worry is that we live in a country where we have coined this terminology of equalization. And the concern I have is that it happened in 2012 when the stakeholders were at the opposite ends of the equation. Now it's happening, and as Dr. Akwete has said, the mantra on the part of the party in government is go to court. Trust me, because MPP will not be in power forever and ever. One day NDC will be in power, and then MPP will do the same thing. Now my concern is we cannot live in a country like this, where every now and then we have this kind of cyclic, violence. We must, as a people, find some way of resolving it.
Let me quickly introduce the Deputy Attorney General, then you can continue.
No
so
problem.
we have also been joined by Mr. Joseph Dindiok Kwemka. He is the Deputy Attorney General and MP for Timpani constituency. Mr. Kwemka, can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Kwemka. Okay, I see him, but he doesn't seem to hear us. But we'll try and connect him. Kindly continue.
Yeah, the other thing is that 21 days, time frame to go to court after gazetting. Gazetting was done 15 plus 21 is 36, which takes us to about 6th January or 5th January. So NDC is still within that time frame, Now, when it chooses to court, it's an option that it decides. In any case, it has a lot of work to do. You see, one other thing that I take very, very seriously is that if the EC could declare the results in the first instance on the 9th, and then come a few hours later and vary the results, and then come and explain herself, and I'm told the results have changed about 6 times. Couldn't this have been the opportunity for the EC, instead of being unilateral or unilateralist in its approach, to have invited the parties, to sit around the table and say, look, we have problems with the results that I've declared. What are your issues? Give them your spreadsheets, let them scrutinize, resolve all the discrepancies, come out and announce. This attitude of the EC, that it is impervious to suggestions from the other side, the idea that the EC has just decided not to engage with the IPAC has not created a forum where you could dialogue around the results. So Ghanaians now say, go to God, go to God. I mean, what kind of mentality do we have? A court is an option, but can't we have, as Professor Kwesi Prempeh has said elsewhere on a Facebook post, have some very simple administrative arrangements to sit around the table, look at the numbers, and then see whether there could be adjustments here and there.
But the question is, can the EC, after declaring the results in favor of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, on its own now overturn that decision to say that, well, we found some irregularities here and there, and so now the winner really is Mr. Dramani Mahama?
But that is what it's done. It declared a winner, but changed the percentages, changed the numbers, added 1,000 plus or whatever to the winning candidate, deducted 1,000 or whatever from the losing candidate. Ekweadonko got -1, PPP got +1. People are saying that what is the basis of these additions and subtractions? So the approach of the EC, you see, that narrow interpretation of the Supreme Court's decision that the EC is independent in determining its own methods of doing its work, doesn't mean, I mean, as parents, we have the authority to raise our children. But we know that in some instances, we engage with them. It doesn't mean that we have surrendered the authority that we have as parents. You see, this is how we have organized society. Now, let me come back quickly to the demonstrations, And I say that the police must be very careful. Dr. Akwete has made a certain point. I saw a policewoman beating one of the, culprits on the back. And I asked myself, is this democratic policing? Instead of protecting the assembly to protest peacefully, the police ends up throwing rubber bullets and hot water and so on at them. We must be careful that the fact that we have the authority doesn't mean that we can use the authority anyhow that we like. The other point that I must explain is that the question of trust. It is not only the NDC that doesn't trust the police or other institutions. In fact, the incumbent government does not trust, the party doesn't trust the police. And that is why, as of now, the state cannot account for who inflicted the deaths on the Ghanaians. The minister has said it, that they are now looking for them. And yet it was the police that was spearheading the Election Security Task Force. So there has been an attempt, including by the state, to create forces that are extra-constitutional, that are going around armed with pistols and shooting and killing people who are going to cast their votes. Is that the Ghana that we want? That is what we must talk about. These are the things that have brought us to where we are. It is not a protest. If Ghana's democracy standing in the world is in question, it is that we went to elections and we killed 8 people and injured upward of 100. That is what is damaging the democracy. It is not about a losing party taking to the streets. So collectively, we must look at all the factors that are now, coalescing, if I should use that word, to try and create this atmosphere of tension.
Very well. In the course of the week, I believe the NDC General Secretary, Mr. Johnson Ketia, reacted to call for the party to seek redress in court. We have a clip of that. We'll take that, and then I go over to Mr. Kwemka for his reaction. Let's take a listen to that.
Let me say that there is freedom of belief in this country. You can choose to believe in lies. You can choose to believe in anything you want to believe in. It doesn't change reality in any way. And it's been said, there's a favorite quote I've always been referring to, that the definition of stupidity is knowing the truth, seeing the truth, but deciding to believe in the lies. And I don't think that the population, the Ghanaian population, should suffer because of somebody's choice to believe in lies. So that is why we are saying that let us go and look at the beginning point where there was a meeting of minds. Then we will know who is speaking the truth and who is lying. If anybody decides that, and it is becoming a common mantra by a lot of the sycophants we have around, that the only way is to go to court. The only way is to go to court. The only way is not to go to court. At least what is contained in our constitution is clear. Our own practices and conventions indicate that the only way to resolve these matters is not to go to court. The court is an option. We understand.
Right, so that was Mr. Johnson Ketia, the NDC General Secretary, speaking to Komla Kluche there. Mr. Pemka, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. I hope you're doing well. Hello?
Yes,
Okay.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Very well. I'm not sure if you saw the video we just played of Mr. Johnson Ketia. Did you see that?
Yes, I watched it.
Very well. Where he's saying that, of course, we've had discussions here prior to that, but he's saying that the court is not the only option. And I know you have had cause to make statements in respect of, this, not necessarily his statement, but in talking about the fact that, yes, if they have issues, they should also take it up with the courts. Now, what do you make of this kind of, reaction from the NDC?
It's not necessarily his thing, but talking about the fact that, yes, if they have issues.
Hello, Mr. Kremka, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You may go ahead. I'm asking about your thoughts on the NDC's.
Very well.
Very well. If you could kindly lower the volume of your television, I think we're having a feedback.
Very well, very well. Madam, I thank you very much for this opportunity. And let me begin by saying that, yes, in this particular situation that we find ourselves in, the fundamental thing that ought to be done by any person who is aggrieved is constitutionally stipulated. That's the first thing you need to know. Any act you are engaging in after the declaration has been made by the Electoral Commission must be one sanctioned by our Constitution and our other statutory provisions in our law books. That's a fundamental thing. So if you engage in an act that is not sanctioned by law in an attempt to challenge an electoral process, that act of yours is an illegality. And to that extent, you must put a stop to it. Now, there is a procedure for challenge in presidential elections. He has stated his opinion, and I've heard him, and others have also stated their opinion. But the fundamental question we should all be asking ourselves is, how will a demonstration on the streets result in the change of the election results that have been declared?
But it's their right to do so, provided they do it peacefully, isn't it?
I have stated time without number that right must be exercised responsibly. And first of all, if you are exercising your right to demonstrate, what I understand them to mean is that the elections were flawed. That is their argument. And that rather than declaring His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo as winner, the winner should have been His Excellency, former President Mahama. That is the argument of the NDC. Now, that was not granted by the EC because the EC went ahead to declare what were the set of facts presented to them after collation of all the 275 constituencies across the country. Now, at that stage, when you are aggrieved by the conduct of the Electoral Commission and you want the results to turn, the street will not assist you to turn the results. Let's get that fundamentally right. Because when you start on a note of a series of fallacies, then you will land on a fallacious conclusion, which will not result in a solution to that problem which you think has been created. So if they think that genuinely they have a case, that's why everybody is saying it. If you want the election results, as has been gazetted, to change in your favor, the only forum where you can ventilate your grievances and get the issues reversed will be the Supreme Court, properly constituted. So if you go back to 2012, you realize that, yes, the MPP may have gathered at Obra Spot, but we did not have this kind of thing from across regions and etc., and the level of violence which is being unleashed by people. Again, you talked about the right to protest and etc. That is also governed by law. The Public Order Act is very clear that you don't need a permit, but you need notification, and that's also part of the law. So if you don't need a permit and you need notification, you fail to provide the needed notice to the police to enable them police the situation and ensure that there is no violence, then again, your act, which you think is constitutionally imbued and endowed in you, you are acting unconstitutionally on one hand because you did not also comply with the dictates of law. But fundamentally, as I have stated time and again on other fora and would like to repeat same here, if you are aggrieved by a declaration made by the returning officer for the presidential election by virtue of the declaration of presidential results, the resort to the solution to what you actually want is the Supreme Court. That's a fundamental basis. So I've heard the General Secretary of the NDC as you stated, and I've heard my very good uncle, Festus Abuaje, and the other panelists. They've all stated their opinions on the matter. But the fundamental thing we are supposed to look at now is the legal basis for what they are doing. Is it illegal to go on a demonstration without notification? Answer is that it is not legal. If it is not, we condemn it. But again, why have we gotten to where we are? We have gotten to where we are because some person or group of persons have urged their supporters to go on the streets, to pour on the streets, to demonstrate. And they have claimed that the election results have been rigged. You see, until you get to court and test the set of facts that you have in your hands, and they are subjected to cross-examination and etc., you will not understand that to every story there are two sides. Now, if you look at the NDC's case, yesterday, I followed the Electoral Commission and unfounded. Some of the allegations they were making are unfounded. Why? Because when the EC replied to what is actually happening, you realize that
Honorable, I think we are losing some of your...
Even before court. For example...
Honorable, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Right. Your submissions are not coming through clearly because the connection...
Can you get me now? I can see.
Yes, I can get
you. Is it okay now?
Yes, it's okay now. So if you could kindly go back a bit to...
So what I was saying was that when they started coming out with padding, for example, they said some of the polling stations were padded. Now, when they said some of the polling stations were padded, the Electoral Commission came out to respond. For example, I recall that there was one in Suani East or West, I'm not too sure, where they said that they had been padded with over 400 votes and etc. The Electoral Commission came out to explain that this was not the case. In any case, have they taken the pink sheet of that polling station and have they found out whether or not their agents signed? And if their agents signed, what were they signing to? You have to find out all these things. And before you come out to the public domain, because they knew at the time of making that statement that For example, in that polling station, there was a problem with calibration of the machine. And the Electoral Commission stated that, yes, 49 names actually went to the place. But when they did the recalibration, etc., the numbers went up to about 400 plus, leading to those people voting. And they were having representatives on the ground who were supposed to cross-check these things. What information have they gotten from those representatives? Because the Electoral Commission story has been told that what you are claiming is in fact not the case.
No,
so as they continue to churn out those challenges that they think were things that influenced the elections and etc., they must be mindful of the fact that the Electoral Commission, they could seek audience to clarify some of these things if they wish to. Because at this particular stage, the EC does not have the mandate to come back and announce fresh results. They don't have that mandate.
Very well, that's fine. The EC doesn't have the mandate to come back to declare after the declaration of the 10th of the 9th, of December. We appreciate that. The EC cannot do that in terms of now coming to overturn its own results that were declared on the 9th. The question is, there are people calling for the EC to give an audience to, the aggrieved parties. Here we're talking about the NDC, to hear them out and perhaps do the audits that they are requesting. Is that a request that is too much to ask?
Unfortunately, that is not sanctioned by any law.
That's true. But we've done a number of things not sanctioned by law. Looking at, for instance, the IPAC. IPAC was set up not sanctioned by law, but it served a certain purpose. And so, are we saying that because this process, as it were, has not been sanctioned expressly by law, so that cannot happen?
If we engage ourselves in that exercise, we may never have an end to the declaration. Because when they make another audit and they come out with a set of findings and make another declaration, another party not satisfied will also come again with yet a petition for them to also do recollation or audit. Then how do we come to a finality of the results declared ever? We may never come to any finality. So once the results have been declared, the process is that if you are not satisfied, you have 21 days within which to challenge it in court. Now, when you go, some of these things they are churning out in the media and etc., you ventilate them. And mind you, madam, as I know you so well, before the Supreme Court can overturn the results, then whatever claims you are making should have been significant enough, when proven, should have been significant enough to overturn the results as announced by the EC. So if, for example, you go and prove about 1,000 votes, which were padded somewhere, and those votes are taken out, and yet when those votes are taken out, a particular person should be declared winner, then your claim is not substantial enough to overturn the results. Diminished principle. So you must balance it. And that is why I am saying that some of these problems have come about as a result of the fact that we as leaders give false hopes to our supporters. And when our supporters are charged up, we now find every means to justify whatever we have told them to do. That's what I now find going on. The NDC is seeking every means now to justify their aid to their supporters to pour on the streets. But the consequences of that, remember, the security agencies are also enjoined by law to make sure that this nation is at peace and not at war. And so if you engage in any act contrary to law and the security agencies apply what they term sometimes as minimum force in order to curtail it, it may result in some casualties. And that is not good for the image of our nation. But we, those who are on the streets, should be mindful of the fact that we are governed in Ghana not by rules of the jungle, by a set of rules and principles, which any person who is aggrieved by the conduct of another person is entitled and enjoined by law to seek redress in a competent court. In this particular case, the Supreme Court. So my worry, as I keep saying, is that, and I heard again your panelists who stated that no party will be in power forever. Of course, that is a fact, statement of fact. No party will ever be in power forever. But when people stated, some of those who are speaking today and urging people to go on the streets, in 2012 stated that if MPP was aggrieved to go to court. What happened? MPP did go to court. And after litigation, judgment was passed. And now His Excellency, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, conceded. Even though he said that he respected the decision of the Supreme Court, he disagreed with it, did not go for review, and Ghana moved on. See, none of us in this country is bigger than Ghana. One day, somehow, all of us will not be there, but the corporate Ghana will still be maintained. So whatever we are doing, we should not be thinking too much about the ego. We should be thinking much about the Ghanaian corporate society at large and our image internationally. Now you cry all this move. At the end of the day, you are not able to prove your case, and maybe you lose it. And then the collateral damage that would have been caused as a result of your earlier conduct and utterances will take several years to repair the image and integrity of the country. I think that does not speak well of us. So whatever conduct we engage ourselves in, for me, simplicity must be in compliance with laid down rules and regulations. Anything outside that is unlawful. And once it is unlawful to that extent, nobody needs to condone it. We need to speak and speak forcefully and make very emphatic points to our Ghanaian people that we cannot compromise the peace and security of our nation.
Thank you for that, Honorable Joseph Dindok-Memka. He's the Deputy Attorney General. And we'll be taking a break at this point. When we come back, we'll be wrapping up on this part of the conversation and then move on to look at how the 8th Parliament is beginning to shape up and the effects of that on government business moving forward. Let me also add that we're expecting to be joined by Honorable Alhaji Inusa Fuseni of the NDC. And so when he comes in, as usual, we'll do the needful and introduce him. But let's take a quick break. We'll see you shortly.
Two healthy kids last night. Congrats. Have you heard?
2 kids.
You get free calls from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. for 6 months when you make an Airtel Tigo money transaction on new Airtel Tigo Saves.
My son has 2 kids. Agwazi. No. Now you just saw almost 7.
For all your lengthy conversations, get a SIM today.
Yes, so I'm still talking.
I give my family confidence with Pepsodent Triple Protection 1, 2, 3. It's 3 toothpaste in 1 to give them cavity protection, white teeth, and fresh breath. Pepsodent Triple Protection 1.
Introducing Nestle Milo All-in-One Nutrimix. The goodness of malt, milk and cocoa in Milo, and even more milk. Just add to water and enjoy the perfect cup of winning energy.
Milo! This advertisement has been vetted and approved.
How safe is your environment from pathogens? How do we survive this new normal with bacteria and viruses everywhere? You can take charge of your environment by using Good Air Sans Humidifier with chlorine dioxide tablets to get rid of pathogens, including bacteria and viruses. You can use Good Air Sans Humidifiers in your homes and offices and be rest assured of protection against pathogens. Just set up the Good Air Sans Humidifier in your space to disinfect the place continuously for virus and bacteria-free environment. Our devices work in both public and private spaces like schools, hotels, hospitals, churches, mosques, restaurants, salons, and homes to enjoy a nice family time. Good Air. This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Nido Fortigro contains essential nutrients to help your child be body and mind ready for school.
I know he's ready because the love I give him grows with him.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved.
Smiles are one of the most important things we have. Globally, 1 in 2 children suffer from cavities. Pepsodent with maximum cavity protection repairs tiny holes before they become cavities. Because every smile matters.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Let's get crazy!
Last year was super, spectacular, and scintillating. The people, the music,
the jam! The 3FM all-white party on the lake is back, better and banging! Boxing Day, Saturday 26 December from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. We will be partying hard. Come join your favorite celebrities and personalities as we cruise and jam all night long on the Volta Lake with great music, drinks and grills, all for 400 Ghana cedis. And we will reward the person with the most fashionable mask on the night. Remember, it's Saturday, it's 26 December, it's Boxing Day, it's the 3FM all-white party on the lake. Rate 400 Ghana cedis with drinks, grills, music, entertainment, and the cruise on the Volta Lake all night long. It is going to be a lituation. Hashtag rock your mask. The 3FM all-white party on the
It's our industry and we will critique it to make it better.
The finest entertainment pundits here in Ghana with in-depth knowledge of the entertainment industry.
Do not politicize the face of our entertainment industry because it is not just for fun. It is a lot of hard work. I mean, loads of hard work.
We applaud, analyze, criticize, and update you on the happenings in showbiz here in Ghana and beyond.
There's a reason we speak to the arts and culture. The day we lose grip of that narrative, we are doomed.
This is Simply Showbiz. We set the agenda with blunt analysis of the arts and entertainment industry.
Because it's our passion. My name is Bulldog. My name is Kwame Ajimaibeko.
I am Whitney Wachimensa.
My name is Anoda Samabe.
My name is Miss G. Join my pundits and I right here on TV3.
Simply Showbiz shows Saturdays at 11 a.m. on TV3.
This week on National Juniors Challenge.
Wheelbarrow is a second-class lever because the effort is between the load and the pivot. True or false?
False
is the correct answer.
Make a date with us this Saturday at 2 p.m. on TV3 as we witness this all-exciting competition, National Juniors Challenge, Developing Intellectual. This program is powered by Uniwis Foundation with sponsorship from Best Western Premier Hotel, Bayport Savings and Loans, Bright Schools, Hisense, Institute of ICT Professional Ghana, Prospectus Ghana Limited,
MJC Foods, Anasco Skills and Digicom Engineering Limited, Extra Class.
Supported by
The National Juniors Challenge shows every Saturday at 2 p.m. on TV3. The Ladies Circle.
Your Saturday evenings are never the same when four intelligent ladies are on your screens talking about everything that has to do with women as we get into honest conversations, giveaways, and fun games.
Hi guys, this is Shatamishi.
Sissina So, Zinel Zu. I'm Juliet Ibrahim.
This is the Ladies Circle.
Join the host of the Ladies Circle. Keep watching the Ladies Circle. The Ladies Circle.
Keep watching the Ladies Circle this and every Saturday live on TV3.
Let's get interactive on social media. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hashtag The Ladies Circle.
The Ladies Circle every Saturday 6 p.m. on TV3. Brought to you by
Yaz Sanitary Pad.
Welcome back. You're still watching and listening to the Key Points live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7. We're also online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. So we have in studio Dr. Rashid Dramani, Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs, also Colonel Festus Abuaji, Security Analyst. On Zoom, we have Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, Executive Director of the Institute for Democratic Governance, IDEG, and Joseph Dindiop Wemka, Deputy Attorney General and MP for Timpani constituency. As announced earlier, we're expecting Malaji Inusa Fuseni, Tamale Central MP, to join us, as well as Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, Executive Director of the CDD. So when both of them join us, we will introduce them as necessary. So we're moving on. We will be going straight to Zoom to speak to Dr. Akwete. Dr. Akwete, can you hear me? Hello, Dr.
Yes,
Akwete.
Hello, I hear you.
Very well, great. And so we're looking at the situation where, calls have been made to the EC to reach out to the aggrieved parties and all. I put a question to Honorable Kwemka here, and he raised the issue about the fact that, that wouldn't be sanctioned by law. What do you make of the calls for the EC to, reach out to or at least give them some listening ear, hear them out, and see what can be done? Do you subscribe to such a call?
I think I do. It's important that we also understand politics not to be only the law. Politics calls for dialogue, deliberations, consensus building, negotiations, agreements. Sometimes it preempts going to court because court is litigation. And I think that so far we have had mechanisms. The IPAC was important in getting the parties to come to some conclusion and even decide in elections to collaborate with the EC. There were times that their agreements led to the reform, the compilation of elections, new elections register, for instance, the introduction of biometric system in voter registration, compilation, and management came from an IPAC discussion and an agreement between the parties. And all the reforms we have had in elections, which have been written in law and so on, came through the IPAC and the agreements that the parties reached. So in that case, I think that the situation that we're facing today, a lot of it has to do with how the IPAC, the EC, couldn't manage the IPAC process. For the consensus, for the collaboration, it takes time to build these agreements. And the fact that as we speak now, consensus and deliberation appears to have broken down at the IPAC level, and they make decisions on critical occasions. They make decisions by voting. IPAC is not for voting. You would go the mile till you find the agreement or the consensus. And therefore, I think that when people called, when, for instance, General Mosquito said the court is not the only way, I understood him to say not that ultimately you have to go to court, but what about the EC and the responsibility it has in creating the space for political conversation?
But Doc, to the extent that, sorry to cut you, Doc, but to the extent that the NDC is seeking a certain objective, and if maybe that isn't what it is, but at least it appears that they're seeking, if you listen to their supporters, they're saying, we want the EC to declare our candidate, Mr. John Dramani Mahama, as the winner. But that cannot be done by the EC after declaring Nana Addo Akufo-Addo as the winner. So if that is what the NDC is looking for,
to do that.
Sure. So to what end, in terms of the discussions that
you see, if you focus narrowly on overturning the results, and that is what the EC is doing, I think we are missing something here. That can only be done in court. That's why the Supreme Court is there. It's declared results, now it's gazetted, it becomes a legal process. And I believe that looking at 2012, the proceedings really open up for almost everything to be brought to court, in the open to discuss, including putting EC in the court, in the dock, to answer questions. I think what I'm where I'm moving to is that because under this current EC, the political processes have collapsed. You are left stringently with the judicial process where the EC can be called into the dock to answer the questions. The allegations that are to be made, the evidence that are to be put forward, we saw that happening in 2013. So it is not too late to raise questions and say, how did we get here? And the allegations that are being made in the collation, in any case, it's not only the NDC that I talked about collation difficulties. The European Union Observer Mission Report, they actually talks about collation and the limitations to transparency and all that. That came up. But these are matters too that you could also discuss and deliberate on and see how you go forward. So now the options have closed because the EC didn't pursue that part. It asserted its independence. It used voting to make decisions, and it deepened the conflict with the MP, with the opposition party, but also it did not open a path that brings the parties as political entities to the table to resolve issues quickly before it got gazetted, and so on and so forth. So that is a very important part of the problem we are facing now. And we shouldn't just leave it and say, going to the court now is where we are. Right. And I think the court will be would open up the processes where, and I hope it goes public if they do, but I think also that it is important for us to understand the danger we are facing now. Listen, the only elections that can cause widespread violence in the country is the presidential, not parliamentary. Parliamentary is localized, but the presidential election is national. And therefore, if you see unnotified police demonstrations in Accra, and you see one in some part of the north, and it continues, it could spread wide. Because it's the presidential, everybody has a stake in that. And we've had on 2 occasions in 2016 and 2012, where we also had the army saying that, hey, the chief of defense staff in 2016, we criticized it. And this year too, we've had it, that if widespread violence broke out and cannot be controlled by the police, they will step in. Do you know what it means? Even if it's to stop the demonstration, it is so damaging, and the interpretation, it could affect our economy.
Right.
And so on, in a very serious way. There are sensitivities about democratic stability, and we have a history. That is why we must ensure that the leaders of the NDC seriously consider whether they would work with the police if they insist or their members want to exercise their rights. I think even if the police wasn't notified, couldn't they, in their own understanding of the rights, civil rights and political rights, provided some protection and so on? Or it's just when you don't go to them, they can't give you protection. But when you go to them, they give you protection. I understand that probably they weren't prepared for the scale of it. But the police has intelligence. The police works on it with intelligence, not just complaints at the charge office. So couldn't they pick this up for them to say, hey, we will protect you, but make sure you don't go to these areas and that area? Sometimes they negotiate with the conveners or organizers of the protest or demonstrations. So there is something to be said about EC. There is something to be said about the police, and there is also, it's important that the issues have been raised. Going to court is litigation. The parties are litigating over something that will substantially not change the fact that the electorate has made a decision. It hasn't given absolute power to one party anymore, but it says, well, it could be parliament. I mean, as we are facing the numbers now. Now, in that case, you can still talk. That's where you talk. That is where the parties must have people also looking at the interpretation of the voters' decision and the kind of positions they would take, the kind of compromises or ideas that would be on the table. That is where you look at the political conversation. So these processes ought to be managed by leadership. The situation we are in calls for political leadership, calls for statecraft, and demonstration substituting political leadership is not an option.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwete. Let me switch to Honorable Pemka. Honorable Pemka, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Right. I mean, we need to be wrapping up on this conversation. So I would want you to react to what Dr. Kwete said. I know I put a similar question to you earlier, but given what he has said now, do you still think that resorting to, some discussions with the EC would not yield any results?
Dr. Kwete, let's put things in perspective. I've heard his submission time and again. It appears idealistic, but let's put this in a certain perspective. Question is, what he's suggesting, if there is that engagement with the political parties at the level of IPAC as you're suggesting, if there's that engagement and there's a discussion on the results, if there's that engagement and then there is that audit that he's talking about, to what end? Then the Electoral Commission will say that, yes, we've engaged the parties and we've come to the conclusion that we're wrong in the declaration we made. or were right in the declaration we made, or we are unable to confirm or deny? I don't know. To what end? Because you see,
may I clarify something? May I clarify for you, Honorable?
Clarify, yes, yes, briefly.
Just a minute, because otherwise he's misrepresented. I am saying that there was a phase where these conversations should have taken place. Ideally before the declaration.
No, can you put your video on? We can't see you.
Oh, you want to see me?
We need to see you.
Okay. Listen, there was a point at which these conversations ought to have gone on before the declaration. And before once the declaration was a bit late because soon after you gazetted. So now it's a judicial process. Now you resort to the Supreme Court because of the procedures and so on to resolve. But I'm pointing out that the EC has precipitated the situation in not also using the political conversation channels. And that the reason why we should encourage NDC to go to court if it must or it feels it should go is that we are certain the EC would also be in the dock to account for its stewardship, its administration, and why we got here.
Very well. Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification. Yes, Honorable.
Yes, strictly speaking, as indicated by him, the discussion now is about the way forward.
Exactly, but I think it's a lesson learned he's pointing us to. A lesson for the future, which is worth taking into consideration.
As we move on. But the fundamental thing we need to resolve now is what is the way forward. Because there's no need to cry over split milk. In any case,
in these circumstances, maybe there is.
Now, in this particular case, where we are is that a declaration has been made, gazetting has been done, and the question is, any party aggrieved by the declaration made and the gazetting that has been done has a remedy. What is the remedy available to the person? Is it strict protest? Is it dialogue or court? And I'm saying that at this particular moment, the resort to court is the only way by which you can get your grievances addressed, where we have reached.
I agree.
Very well. Thank you for that. I will now come to the guest in the studio. And Dr. Damani wanted and then Ken of Festus Abadi would wrap it up for us.
I mean, I just want to say, there's
Abna, Damani is not on the screen, has never been. What explains this?
He's in the studio.
We can't see him.
He's in the studio. You watch your TV, you see him.
Okay, thank you.
But I can see you very, very well, so it's enough. I think. Yeah. So I think I was just about to make the point that look, there's no need to cry over spilled milk, as he said. But sometimes I think there is a need.
Sure.
And we talk about the law, we talk about the constitution, and so on. I have seen countries where, in the interest of the lives of citizens, they've put constitutions aside and said, look, I mean, let's be pragmatic here and let's deal with this situation. I mean, I have seen countries where the constitution doesn't make room for a prime minister, but circumstances have forced those countries to create a position of a prime minister in order to bring tension down and to bring the country back from the edge, And I mean, you guys are lawyers. In law, I think there is what you call jurisprudence, isn't it? So sometimes it's not only the law. Some common sense is also very, very important in interpreting or in application of the law. Like Colonel said here, the fact that the EC, the Supreme Court has said the EC is independent and so on and so forth, doesn't mean that some common sense, and doesn't mean that we should be seeing this level of intransigence that, look, it's either this way or there is no other way. Because like Dr. Akwete said, we could have avoided all these troubles that we are going through if IPAC was working very well, if there was a lot of dialogue. And like he said, over the years, IPAC has worked on the basis of consensus. And if you get to a point where IPAC is working now on the basis of let's vote and see which side wins, then I think those were signals that were
heading for dangerous times. Very well. Can I offer Mr.
I have not met my friend the legal mind yet, but I've seen him many times. Or probably I met him once on a certain platform. You see, the question to what end? It's not, the discourse is not about changing the results alone. It's also about managing the emotions. The emotions, to some extent, are informed by understanding. So if through the process of engagement within the IPAC structure could help to clarify certain inconsistencies, ambiguities, discrepancies, as Dr. Akwete has said, people will begin to, calm down. Let's remember that from the 6th of January, when the 21 days would have lapsed, assuming the NDC goes to court, we add another 42 days. That takes us to March. Can we afford to sit on tenterhooks till March before the court comes out to clarify? So there is every reason to advocate for this dialogue. And I've said it many times. A dialogue is not a process which means that one side has conceded defeat or otherwise. It's not like that. It's an avenue, a framework for communication, to understand where people are coming from. Where is the NDC coming from? Why is the EC where it is? If people can understand, then they can go and encourage, especially the political parties, their members, to try and calm down. Yesterday also, if it was, Parliament is already saying that the EC should come, the IGP should come, in fact, the Minister of Interior should even be there. All the key actors must go to Parliament, where we are all represented, to try and report on how they managed the process. It is not sufficient to grant an interview to a radio station or a TV station and then say that we are looking for culprits. To me, is an indictment on the state that in full glare of the public, people can open fire, use firearms, and the state says, I don't know who did it. So I would advocate for this form of dialogue. Then we need to be mindful. Another part of this dilemma that we have is social media. The messages that I've received, audio, video, on social media, some of which are just recycled material. We need to begin to talk about social media and its impact, on our electoral processes. At the end of the day, we must get the reports, comprehensive reports. I've said time and again that if I go to the government website and I navigate myself to police, to CID, and I'm looking for crime statistics, the latest that you have is May 2018. In a democracy, the institutions are accountable to the people. We must get a full report on how the elections were managed by the EC, by the Election Security Task Force headed by the IGP, by other sector ministries, who were involved. Then, of course, there is this debate also about the media, where it is now turning out to be that the media itself was subverted by political interests that fed them with some information that the media declared as, So all of us, in fact, even at this time... Those
are allegations that will have to be proven beyond reasonable doubt.
Yes.
Seriously.
But at this time, even all of us here making these comments, we need to be a bit measured.
Sure.
Because otherwise, one day the truth will come out.
Very well.
We might realize, as indeed is beginning to happen, where people fully endorse the EC, and then a few days later had to come back and do a bit of retraction.
Right.
But
we need to take a break.
Ad interim, I will call once again on the NDC to act within the law, so that we don't inflame passions the more.
Right.
Because I know that there is a risk if the demonstrations or protests escalate nationwide, gains critical mass, and indeed, if the state responds, as is being suggested, that the armed forces will come in.
Right.
The armed forces may come in not to control the crowd. They may come in with another agenda.
Yeah.
Which may set us back several decades.
Years. Very well. Thanks for that, Colonel Festus Obwaji. We'll take a break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the 8th Parliament, yet to be sworn in, though, and matters playing out so far. See you after this break.
From Accra to Kumasi, the VIP in the evening is very cold, right? Yeah, I went to the back, there was this woman, I realized it was because of the air condition. So I said, Ma, Dumne. She was like, Debbie, Mechiaka.
Hey, Kumasi, Kumerica, it is time to laugh. Ascon Media, in partnership with Rotary Park, presents Ghana Comedy Festival. It's going to be a night of laughs, giggles, funny things, live band music with performances from Clemento Suarez, Obi Amponsa, Lexi D. Kome, Uncle Kobe, Tita Kwejo, Foster Romanos, and a whole host of other comedians.
I went to Kumasi, I greeted one guy, how do you do? I was like, I do the do now, live if I don't know,
happening on the 19th of December at the Rotary Park Dome, Kumasi, Denyame. Rate is 50 Ghana cedis. The Ghana Comedy Festival. Your laughter is guaranteed.
Close-up deep action with antibacterial mouthwash formula and deep cleaning gel. Close-up deep action. Enjoy long-lasting fresh breath.
Introducing Nestle Milo All-in-One Nutrimix. The goodness of malt, milk and cocoa in Milo, and even more milk. Just add to water and enjoy the perfect cup of winning energy. Milo! Milo! This advertisement has been vetted and approved by... This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
With schools temporarily closed and students staying home, teachers at North Hills International School, the most preferred private school in Ghana, award recipients in 2018, continued to have constant interactive classes with our pupils while simulating classroom experience online. At North Hills International School, we adapt to change and we go the extra mile to make sure any investment made in your ward's education yields the best results. We admit students from preschool to junior high school. Our arms are open to welcoming your ward into our wonderful community. Call us today and let your child start a promising journey of global excellence with us. North Hills International School, climbing academic excellence.
The assurance that absolutely none can compare. The peace of mind that nothing could ever be better. The joy that comes with being free to be who you are. And the knowledge that where we're from can guide us to where we're going. Key, a tradition of smiles, a future that's bright. This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Get crazy! Last year was super, spectacular, and scintillating. The people, the music, The Jam! The 3FM all-white party on the lake is back, better and banging! Boxing Day, Saturday 26 December from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. We will be partying hard. Come join your favorite celebrities and personalities as we cruise and jam all night long on the Volta Lake with great music, drinks and grills, all for 400 Ghana cedis. And we will reward the person with the most fashionable mask on the night. Remember, it's Saturday, it's 26 December, it's Boxing Day, it's the 3FM all-white party on the lake. Rate 400 Ghana cedis with drinks, grills, music, entertainment, and the cruise on the Volta Lake all night long. It is going to be a lituation. Hashtag rock your mouth.
2020 has been that kind of a year, but we are here to help you end the year on a high. That is why TV3 is bringing you Christmas loaded with goodies upon goodies to ensure your festive season is super lit. You can count on us for truly entertaining shows all throughout Christmas. We are also giving you the opportunity to be a star in our Sing Your Carol activation. You can record yourself singing a Christmas carol and send to us via WhatsApp 0242 377 584 or 0547 599 823 for a chance to have your video aired on TV3 and get rewarded with exciting prize packages. You also get to enjoy special Christmas songs from your favorite artists and mentor contestants. Plus, there will be a special Christmas celebration on Mentor on the 13th of December this year. We wish you a Merry Christmas. And to top it all up, we are bringing 12 days of TV3 Movie Mania from 21st December to 1st January. We will bring to you not one but two exciting movies every single day. Christmas is coming. This year, Christmas will be best enjoyed on TV3. TV3, first in news, best in entertainment.
Welcome back. You're still watching and listening to The Key Points, and we're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7 and online at 3news.com. We're also on Facebook at TV3 Ghana. Moving on next, we shall be looking at developments regarding the parliamentary elections. And this week, we had the Sine West constituency results declared after the Winchi High Court dismissed the NPP petition that had been filed to challenge the results of that elections. And with that out of the way, it is clear that the two main parties, NPP and NDC, now have equal number of seats in Parliament, 137, 137, with the former MP, lawyer Andrew Zamwakon, keeping the one. But of course, we have heard of indications that he would be sitting with the NPP in Parliament, but that would only bring the number to 137, 138, a very, very slight majority, in fact, an insignificant one, if you ask me. But we need to be looking at how those dynamics would impact government business moving forward when the 8th Parliament is installed on the 7th of January, and that is what we'll be discussing now. Before we get our panelists to have their perspectives on this, let's take a story that was put together in respect of Parliament as it's shaping up. Let's take a listen to that.
Parliament, as a legislative wing of government, appears to have received a battering at the hands of voters. For the neutrals, it also changes the narrative about its effectiveness in strengthening Ghana's governance system. The chances of many of these parliamentarians going into this election on December 7 was one that would be answered by the ordinary voter. Indeed, they showed their strength in the numbers that so far have lost their seats going into the next parliament. But the bigger question is, how do we move forward by strengthening our own parliamentary democracy? Dr. Rashid Rahman operates the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. He's worried the attrition rate of these MPs weakens the legislature.
All parliaments that I have known that have been very effective, they've been parliaments where no one party has an overwhelming majority. You cannot work on the assumption that at the end of the day, because when it comes down to the vote, we are going to have our way, it calls for a lot of compromise and a lot of dialogue. And then in the end, oversight gains. In the end, the lawmaking process is much better. In the end, scrutiny is done much better than a situation where, the party that has the numbers will simply have its way, even if some of the things do not make sense.
In general, the massive clear-out also gives an indication of a growing sophisticated voter population.
If you look at, the outcome of these elections, one clear message that comes out is the fact that Ghanaians were not satisfied with the status quo. They were not satisfied with the MPP because, the MPP could not get the 1 million plus votes that they got the last time. They were not satisfied with the NDC because the NDC tried to wrestle that 1 million and they only got 500,000 of it. So which meant that citizens were not happy with both sides. They were not happy because perhaps the ruling party in Parliament was excessively partisan. Maybe that's the view of citizens when they went to vote. And that maybe the NDC was excessively opposition would have been constructive. Is from the fact that MPs mount platforms and they make all kinds of promises that that make them look like development agents that they are not. So when citizens go to vote, one of the things that they are doing is trying to see in reality what has changed in my constituency. And for them, they see the MP, not the district chief executive. They see the MP as a person that they have to hold accountable. Meanwhile, he is not a development agent, but because of what he said or she said, or because the voter does not really understand the proper role of an MP.
Right, so that was a story there introducing our topic to be discussed next. So clearly, we've seen some reduction in the seats from the NPP from 169 to 137, and an increase of the NDC from 106 to 137. So that's 31 increase on the side of the NDC, 32 losses on the side of the NPP, and 31 increase or gains on the side of the NDC. Quite an interesting 8th Parliament we'll be having, and that has raised a number of concerns and a number of interesting issues, because obviously it's going to be a novel situation. I would want you, Dr. Dramani, to start us off with that quickly. Your thoughts on how the 8th Parliament is beginning or is appearing to look like.
Thank you very much. We have a hung Parliament. I've heard many people say, the classical definition of a hung Parliament doesn't apply here and so on.
Yeah.
However you define it, however you twist it, what
it is
hung
what
Parliament,
it is.
What a hung Parliament means is that there is no one party that has a clear majority. And in this case, NDC has 137, MPP has 137. The independent member is not a member of the MPP. If today he comes out and says, I'm a member of the MPP, then that trouble that befell him a few months ago, I think will be triggered again this time around. And so we have some very difficult situation on our hands and some interesting times ahead of us. In thinking about the next Parliament, in looking at the configuration, your viewers have heard, the interview that I granted to your colleague the other day. Talking about the fact that, no one party came out of this exercise unscathed. Each party got some bruises and so on and so forth. But that was, at the time I granted the interview, it was before we got the finality that we have right now, barring all the court challenges that are likely to come and that are likely to change the configuration of Parliament. But for now, we have what we have. And this might be the beginning of the compromise and the dialogue that will be needed for the next 4 years. And for me, one of the critical things that I am looking at, and I hope the two sides would think about very carefully, particularly the governing side, is, who becomes the arbiter, who becomes the speaker of our 8th Parliament in order to manage this delicate situation that we have on our hands. We should be looking for somebody that, despite perhaps the person is going to come from the MPP, because that's what traditionally has happened, the party that has, the numbers will be the one that, and now given that the Formina MP will be voting with the MPP, when on January 6 midnight going to January 7, when a speaker has to be elected, the MPP definitely has an edge.
Right.
Because they will have 138 and the NDC would have 137. But we need somebody more than ever before that has the power of persuasion. Somebody that is coming from the MPP stock, but at the same time fiercely independent and going to be fair in the management of parliamentary business.
Right.
Otherwise, I think we are in for lot of gridlock and a lot of
challenges or issues in the 8th Parliament. But just before I move to the other panelists, quickly, you bring in a bit about the election of Speaker. I know it's been a topical issue, and I believe it's because the NDC, prior to the declaration of the presidential results by the EC, did make some suggestions about the fact that, yes, we have majority and we will elect or we will appoint the Speaker. But question is that how it works? That is done, the election of a Speaker is done pursuant to the standing orders of Parliament.
Yes.
I've looked at the standing orders. I haven't seen anywhere that suggests that it is the majority that would necessarily have to elect. Because there's a process.
Yes, the process is election.
Yes.
Election is numbers. So that is where, over the years, we've had, the practice has been that the party that's in power would be the party eventually that, or the party that has the majority. So Article 95, I think so, of the Constitution
97.
says that, it's 95, says that the Speaker will be elected from amongst people who are qualified to be members of Parliament. So normally, the party that has the majority would put forward a name, and then symbolically the party that's in minority will also put forward a name. But we know over the years that if it is NDC that's in power, then the candidate will come from the NDC stock. If it is MPP, the same thing. Over the years, we've had speakers that have come from outside Parliament, except in the 6th Parliament, when we have the Right Honourable Doa Jaho. And in that case, Article 97 of our Constitution says that there should be a by-election and so on and so forth. Now, talking about the power of the persuasion and managing the 8th Parliament and so on, I was saying the other day that perhaps, if I'm advising the two parties in Parliament, I will say to them, look, NDC, let the MPP take the speakership position, and perhaps as part of the dialogue and the compromise that our president spoke about when he addressed the nation in his victory speech, let's begin to demonstrate the compromise and the sharing of power, if you like, by saying, okay, NDC should take maybe some of the leadership of the committees and so on and so forth. I know, the standing orders say the majority is the group that has to lead committees in Parliament. But now we are in a situation where is no clear majority.
Sure. So that's where the consensus building would have to.
That's where the consensus building and the dialogue would have to start now.
Very
and
well.
I think that let's see that play out.
Right from the choice of speaker.
Yes, right from the choice of speaker and the choice of those two leaders. I mean, somebody told me that, well, in this country, we are not used to sharing power. I mean,
well, maybe
it's true. Over the years, it's been winner takes all. You get it all or you get nothing. But now we are forced into a situation.
Sure.
And as I said earlier, I've seen countries where, they put aside the constitution because we can't stick to the constitution and then people are dying. It doesn't make sense. So the constitution is there. I mean, the law says A, B, C, D, but if we follow that, that is going to create. So that is where some pragmatism is needed and some dialogue.
Very well.
And then particularly as they say, Parliament is the master of its own rules.
Exactly, its own rules. Very well. Colonel, your thoughts on this, how this is shaping up? The people have spoken, both sides, to work together in the real sense of the phrase.
Yeah, I go with the philosophy that I think Dr. Akwete, mentioned that earlier. Society is not governed by law alone, but by other institutions, other mechanisms, born out of experience, born out of practice. There's a paper I'm here to publish. I'm waiting for the consensus or some corrections by the Colombian mission. But the Republic of Colombia, I think in the 50s, realized that, and they've been independent for 200 years, that political parties were the source of instability in Colombia. So they created what they call the National Forum between the two major parties. So in this case, constitution is there, but NDC, MPP, maybe a pinch of the other smaller parties here and there. And they were able to govern the country for 16 years. And it brought stability. So we need to think out of the box. I am not an expert at all in parliamentary affairs. But the sense I get, one sense I get is that arrogance on the part of majority in parliament, which is translated in, you can have your say, but we'll have our vote. I think that will be addressed. That it is no longer going to be business as usual, that you talk, jaw, at the end of it, because you have the numbers, you're going to vote for it. So dealing with the complacent attitude of majorities in parliament alone, I think will be good for our democracy. But of course, it could also be too contentious.
Sure.
But we'll wait to see which way the pendulum swings.
Exactly. Which is why the choice of a leader, like Dr. Dramani said, is very critical.
I'm also thinking that, and God forbid, but the numbers, the mathematics will not stay unchanged or may not stay the same over the 4 years.
Sure. Anything could
there
happen.
Could be
have
deaths,
a by-election.
There could be other reasons, resignations and so on.
Sure.
So there are likely to be, what do you call it?
By-elections.
By-elections, for instance, which could change the dynamics completely.
Right.
And that is one reason why the parties need to be a bit more careful.
Very well.
The other side I'm interested in a bit is, when it comes to very critical issues, for purposes of discussion, let's take the Ejapa royalty or Ejapa whatever it is. It gives the opportunity for the representatives to critically scrutinize the content or the provisions of those agreements, which is better for our democracy.
Sure.
So once we are able, to satisfy both sides that those who are not in power, the minority, can interrogate bills that are brought before them, and the bills are passed, we can expect that those bills will be better, than what has been the case as of now.
Okay, well.
So these are my initial thoughts.
Sure.
We need to wait and see how it goes.
Things are very well. Thank you for that. So I'll go straight to Zoom now and speak to Dr. Akwete, and then thankfully we have a member of Parliament here with us in the person of Honourable Dindiokin, so we'll get that inside feeling as to what to be expecting, even though he lost his seat, and so in the 8th Parliament he wouldn't be there. So we would definitely like to have his take on that. But let me do Dr. Akwete first. Dr. Akwete.
Yes.
We have a situation on our hands, a hanged Parliament, as it is. Implications of that moving forward. Your thoughts?
Thank you very much. I think we are in a fluid situation. The dynamics are clear. Both parties say they have cases to pursue in court.
Mm-hmm.
So the numbers could change. And you could, as my brother, retired colonel, said, there will be by-elections. Every parliamentary term, there are by-elections that occur. And so we can get into a swing situation where today this party has it, the next that has it. It could be destabilizing.
Right.
That speakers of parliament are now touched and they change, and then the politics that could go around it. However, I think where we should look at, this is a new situation, and we spend time still playing politics in a situation where the electorate has made a decision. The decision is clear. I mean, when you think, oh, you have one seat, so you must get the majority because Parliament says so and so on. That is the logic of the old system we've had. But what about this new situation, which is new, which is unknown to us, but which the President rightly interprets as we must govern together? The politics will lead to a situation where you might decide that, hey, given the situation lies ahead of us, shouldn't we have a speaker who guarantees stability and who can work across the aisle? And therefore, when the by-elections and other things are taking place, we still had a compromise, and we know that the speaker who leads the House, and of course the majority and minority leader, it's somebody we've agreed for the next 4 years. What we've agreed is this person will be there. It is important because that is the decision. The electorate are fed up with this absolute majority, which gave us some stability, but it now appears to be destabilizing the system.
Right.
And therefore, they ought to go into some conversation, and we'll be surprised. But that would be the mark of leadership. If they ended up in a situation that said, in spite of the independent, the one party, we think that if we interpret the speakers, the electorate very well, it says we should govern together. The president has. So in the conversation, who can best handle Parliament in this material type? Not the numbers, but the competence, because it's going to be a very difficult situation if the numbers change and the majority shifts to the opposition, and so it could destabilize government and it could lead to a lot of fight in Parliament. It is one of the important areas that will signal that there is change. The hypothetical situation would be that yes, it should have been MPP person, we have the independent, but what if we looked at the situation and we want stability irrespective of the changes? And we say, oh, there's somebody who used to be NDC or is NDC, but who has this competence in this material time to help us. So let's go with it. That is the stuff of compromise and goodwill, and interpreting what they say you should govern together, so that we don't have this walkouts and boycotts and whatever that happens that makes one need the majority.
Right. Doc, may I put you on the spot here and ask, may I put you on the spot respectfully and ask that if you were to recommend maybe 2 people for the position of speaker, given what you have talked about and the requirements and the qualities, who would these 2 be? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I'd love to.
Please understand, I can't. In principle, I'm looking at the principle of the consensus and the stability that we need. We need stability in the next 4 years. You know, fortunately, instead of mentioning persons, look at the manifestos of the 2 parties for 2020. Published practically around the same time, a lot of argument. But you have a whole lot of convergence. Do you know that these 2 parties have been working together to amend the Constitution, although with different proposals on each end?
Right.
But when you look seriously, if you do one, you're going to touch most of the other on the other side. The MPPs 2431 and 55-3 will bring a whole lot from the CRIC's 97 proposals. Because there will be consequential reforms. They are primary, those that require referendum and those that Parliament's 2/3 majority. In this kind of situation, how do you easily get 2/3 majority? You see, so they have already, and since the referendum was cancelled, asked the parliamentarians, the two parties have been meeting to find a way forward on constitutional amendments. Speak to the majority leader and the minority. They will tell you, they've been meeting quietly. So there has been certain shift, certain movement that is not obvious to the public. We only know because there's an area of study and research and interest, and we're always interrogating and talking to them. So the parties are, and if you read NDC, after the press statements they released, whilst the NPC was doing its work, and then when the referendum, they said no, and then the referendum was cancelled. Another statement they wrote to the president, later they were calling for reconvening to look at the constitutional issues and what will bring reforms and all that. So there is an area that you look at, and the president has demonstrated his own commitment to constitutional amendment. I'm sure he was very instrumental in getting his party to stick to the two proposals because amendments and so on. So that's one area. Go to whether you want to create jobs, whether you want economic growth or stability, whatever the consequence. There are so many areas, hospitals, healthcare, they are fighting. This is mine. I started this, I'm going to build it. Please, those are trivia. The fundamental thing is that there is a principle around a convergence around what they consider to be the 5 or so priorities that they can deal with. But there has never been within these two, across these two parties, any mechanism for them to talk.
Sure.
And they have no practice. You see, in other jurisdictions, like if it was in the UK, for instance, when it became clear that two parties had to work together, they didn't leave it to the parties to decide. It was the civil service that constituted. In fact, they even interpreted the results and what it meant. In Ghana, we have these two parties leading transitions after every election, and all those transition talks collapsed. None of them has successfully delivered the results, and so on. And we don't have a state entity that can convene them in these times we are. So we are waiting for the parties themselves to do it. It's a weakness in the design of the state. It is important that the Administrator General or somebody or head of civil service or something should have had that power to convene or ready to be discussing these matters. And we don't have. Now, if we leave it to the two parties without mediators, I think I would love to get people who are used to tough negotiations, like the business people, who have to negotiate whatever and so on. Private business, with experience. That is where we are now. The president has to endorse it. The NDC has to endorse it. There has to be a process that will reflect that they genuinely respect the decision of the electorate and not scuttle around it and play with that. But I don't know the individuals who will be this or that. I think it's for them to bring that out, but they should pleasantly surprise the country.
Right. We look forward to that pleasant
surprise. We do
surprise.
not have a situation we usually would have that on the 7th of January. The parliamentary process takes the whole time. The president cannot be sworn in by 12 midday because Parliament has not agreed on who will be speaker. And that is the old game. Respect the electorate's decision and let's move on. All these court cases will not fundamentally change the decision the electorate has made. So we must put pressure on our political leaders. And I think we have people, men and women, who could come to the center and help this process forward. And it must start in earnest.
Very well.
Almost now.
Very well. People to come to the center to help the process move forward. Indeed, those are the words from Dr. Akwete. And these are interesting times, obviously. And we'll be taking a break. When we come back, we'll be speaking to Honorable Bemka. He is a sitting member of Parliament and would want to have his insights into how he foresees the 8th Parliament. Like I said, he will not be part of that, though, because the people voted and didn't re-elect him for the Timpani constituency. But we will have an idea as to what he feels in respect of the 8th Parliament that will be sworn in when we go to January 7, 2021. This is the key point. Stay with us. We will be right back.
2 healthy kids last night. Huh? Congrats. Have you heard?
2 kids.
You get free calls from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. for 6 months when you make an Airtel Tigo money transaction on new Airtel Tigo Sims.
My son has 2 kids. I was see. No. Yes, this son almost 7.
For all your lengthy conversations, get a SIM today.
Yeah, so I'm still talking.
Introducing Nestle Milo All-in-One Nutrimix. The goodness of malt, milk and cocoa in Milo, and even more milk. Just add to water and enjoy the perfect cup of winning energy.
Milo!
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by
Hisense Movie Chapeau!
Hisense Bronya! 15th December, couple 15th January. What you know? Ni atete ni amani suso.
What do you say? Hisense ni ama eye papa. Hisense pen out of over. Yama 5 years warrant. Hey. Hema 5 years warranty.
Hisense ni amani nina. Ya tete so. Every television,
refrigerator, test freezer,
air condition,
gas cooker, electric cooker,
washing machine,
mobile phone, sound system,
microwave oven, blender,
iron,
rice cooker,
water dispenser,
kettle,
steamer,
any be break home.
Aye, Hisense Bronya.
15th December, couple 15th January.
We Hisense showroom bia, and never be all bia. Ya tete so.
Extra sa ube ko Hisense showroom bia na oni abedija. COVID-19 wo sheshe bia ye die gu akwem.
Thank you for your appreciation. I love that.
Hisense, everyday prices for everyday people. And your Hisense Bronya.
Nido Fortigrow contains essential nutrients to help your child be body and mind ready for school.
I know he's ready because the love I give him grows with him.
Smiles are one of the most important things we have. Globally, 1 in 2 children suffer from cavities. Pepsodent with maximum cavity protection repairs tiny holes before they become cavities. Because every smile matters.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA. Get crazy! Last year was super, spectacular, and scintillating. The people, the music, the jam! The 3FM All-White Party on the Lake is back, better, and banging! Boxing Day, Saturday 26 December from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. We will be partying hard. Come join your favorite celebrities and personalities as we cruise and jam all night long on the Volta Lake with great music, drinks and grills, all for 400 Ghana cedis. And we will reward the person with the most fashionable mask on the night. Remember, it's Saturday, it's 26 December, it's Boxing Day, it's the 3FM All-White Party on the Lake. Rate 400 Ghana cedis with drinks, grills, music, entertainment, and the cruise on the Volta Lake all night long. It is going to be a lituation. Hashtag rock your mouth.
And Merry Christmas, I think Unia
TV presents the grandest pre-Xmas fair ever staged. Bronya Jakesie. From rice to goat to shoes to decor, we are bringing vendors who sell all you will need for Christmas to one spot. So your Christmas shopping will be easy. There will be serious discounts, giveaways, and loads of fun activities. It's Bronya Jakesie, brought to you by Unia TV. Unia Bronya Jakesie from 20th to 24th December 2020 at the forecourt of the National Theatre from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. each day. Call 0242-608457 or 0541-159715 for further inquiries or registration. More info coming soon. Unia TV, ye jine wo hopa.
Right, welcome back. You're still watching and listening to the Key Points live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7 and also online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. So we're looking at the dynamics of the 8th Parliament, where currently we have the seats split between NPP and NDC 137-137, with Formina NP having their seat as an independent candidate. We've been speaking to Dr. Rashid Dramani, Colonel Festus Obwaji, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete. We'll be moving on next to get Honorable Dindio Kwemka's perspectives on this. Mr. Kwemka, can you hear me? Hello? Mr. Kwemka? Okay, we are not getting him. He's on there, but I don't think he can hear us.
Very loud and clear.
Okay, great.
I can hear you.
Very well.
Thank you.
Very well, thank you. So, let us know what you make of what is happening or what it has happened currently as it stands. We have this situation on our hands, evenly divided positions or seats, 137, 137. And let's look at how that would impact, parliamentary work moving forward. I know you will not be in the 8th Parliament, but at least you have been in the last Parliament. You've seen how Parliament works. What do you think would be improved, or what is going to be the challenge looking at the numbers as we have it now? Hello? Okay, we can't hear. No, I don't think we have Mr. Kwemka. No. Well, so we would just do another round of this. Dr. Dramani, in terms of, I think we talked about the speaker and the choice of the speaker being a very critical thing, moving forward. Because as
very much.
Okay, so it's delayed.
It will be a very interesting match. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go on.
Yeah, I'm on the line. Can you hear me?
I can. Please go on.
To go on?
Yes, please go on. I can hear you. Go on.
Thank you very much. So as I was saying, this is a very interesting house. 137, 137, one independent. Interesting because then what we are going to have in the country for the next 4 years will not be consensus building. Consensus building because the numbers do not favor one absolutely. And so if you listen to His Excellency the President, when he made his victory speech, he was very clear on that Ghanaians have compelled the two political parties, NDC and NPP, to work together, to collaborate, to cooperate, to ensure that the country moves on. That's the meaning of this particular results that came out. The 137, 137 will compel each of the parties to come to the table with the nation at heart, so that there's collaboration and cooperation to ensure that ultimately the nation wins. And let me again add this, that the party will not have the luxury of making people maybe who are MPs to become regional ministers and stay far away from Accra this time around. Because if you do that, then you diminish the numbers, and then the government's business will not be able to properly run. But let me again add that being a member of the 7th Parliament, the experience I've had is that over 95% of the instances in Parliament are by consensus. Whether legislation or policy direction or contract is by consensus. And it is only the controversial issues or issues that you're not able to build consensus that these numbers come to play. But in most cases, you have both sides actually collaborating and cooperating to ensure that legislation is passed or contract is actually passed or any policy is approved in Parliament. So by and large, the only thing that we're going to have is an elevation of what is already happening. We're going to now have a very high level.
Okay, so we're struggling to hear Honorable Kwemka. The Honorable, I think we'll have to get back to you because we're losing you there. But indeed, Honorable makes some interesting points there. He's talking about the fact that what has happened would only take consensus building to a certain level. That's what he's suggesting, that to a large extent, parliamentary work has been, facilitated by consensus building. It's quite interesting. parliamentarians keep saying that, but the perception out there is that there are a bunch of people who are always, at loggerheads. I don't know why it is, because that's a perception that's out there, though. But consistently, when you speak to them, they will say that parliamentary work consistently, or has been facilitated by consensus, and I believe that's true at the committee levels and all of that. But it's those rare moments where you have contentious matters coming up that we would need this kind of consensus building, but which oftentimes you don't see. And a typical example would be, for instance, the cash for seats investigations, which started out as a bipartisan thing, and we all know how that ended. But he also raises another issue about the choice of ministers, and I think that is interesting, because he's saying that to ensure that you don't lose your numbers, you would want to have MPs, readily available, i.e. in Accra and all of that. What do you make of all those things Mr. Pemka has raised, Dr. Dramani?
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, it's interesting to hear Honorable say, I think on about 95% of instances they've worked on consensus, and then only 5%. And I think that 5% is really a very heavy 5%. That is perhaps more than the 95%, because that is how society has come to judge Parliament in terms of all the disagreements. I mean, but if you understand really how Parliament works, I mean, I agree with him in terms of the fact that at the committee level, that is what we call the engine room of parliamentary business. Because in the plenary, sometimes it's just play into the gallery, play into the cameras, and so on and so forth. At the committee level, most of the time, I think some committees even avoid taking things to the vote. I mean, if you are a very good chair of a parliamentary committee, they work collegially, and as such, on most issues, I mean, they keep deliberating until they come to some consensus. It's certainly going to be interesting that in the 8th Parliament, apart from the fact that, as he said, maybe the government is going to be forced to avoid a situation where a number of MPs are appointed regional ministers and they are far away from Accra. The government would also even have to seriously think about the appointment of ministers. I know the Constitution ties the hands of the president in a way, but I believe that there are some kind of perhaps maybe mechanisms that could be put in place to try to limit this. Because, look, at one point, we are always going to have ministers out of the jurisdiction, even if you are not a regional minister. We have international obligations. Our ministers are going to be part of, delegations out of the country and so on and so forth. So are we going to say, for instance, on almost all the issues that have to be voted on, the party in power would have to wait until it assembles all its numbers in the House? I mean, that is going to add to the potential gridlock and the slow kind of running of Parliament that these the elections have given us. So I think again it goes back, because throughout this discussion and since the results were announced, I think the one common word that I've heard, is consensus. Now, we don't have to pay lip service to this.
Sure.
This issue of consensus. And like I said earlier, yes, the rules are there and so on and so forth. But can we have a Speaker of Parliament, or can we have the two groups really dialogue and see, who takes what? Because if you are going to interpret it strictly, the standing orders, the Constitution, none of them has any numbers to call themselves a majority or minority. So again, I think there's one other issue that I think they should keep behind their minds as they look at how the 8th Parliament is going to play out and how we can avoid all the potential gridlock and so on. Both Colonel and Dr. Akwete have talked about possible by-elections, and in every parliament that we have had, there have been by-elections. God forbid, some people might lose, some MPs might lose their lives and so on, or something might happen, and then you have to go to elections. The election of the Speaker is by simple majority, but the removal of the Speaker is by 2/3 majority. So, if the numbers change, and then we are in a situation where one group says, no, we now have the numbers to decide who the Speaker is. We have the majority to decide who the Speaker is. Yet, given the numbers, even if there are any changes, they are going to be so minimal that no one party can have the 2/3 majority. So thinking ahead of all these means that they really have to sit down and negotiate and share power. Otherwise, we are really going to see a situation where we get to a point where there will be a very serious crisis.
Right.
And
stalemates.
Yeah.
Very difficult times. Choice of ministers being an issue that has been raised. Obviously, the silver lining in this situation may perhaps be that we will see less absenteeism in Parliament, because it has been an issue for some time now. I believe the Judicial group who conduct these parliamentary studies have always indicated absenteeism as an issue in Parliament. So maybe we're going to see less of that. Your thoughts?
It may not necessarily be the case. The last time I heard a conversation around absenteeism, probably by Odikro, one of the reasons was that parliamentarians engage themselves in private business. So they absent themselves from the chamber, not because they're doing government business or state business or public business, but because they are private businesses. Whatever it is, this dynamic of Parliament being a check on the functions of the executive is good for our democracy.
Yep.
I think we should not be too obsessed with due respect to you, the gridlock. Secondly, the dynamic of electing a speaker or the speaker by a simple majority, by removing him on the basis of a 2/3 majority. That's why politics is there. It's all about dealing and wheeling and dealing. So I can see a situation where the two sides make a deal.
Yeah.
And then we're going to test whether people will show faith in the deal that was made.
Sure.
That if the time comes for the speaker to be changed, and you have not fulfilled or obliged your part of the deal, it's going to be a test case whether going forward, the other side, which might feel aggrieved, would have trust, to make deals with the other side. Then the 5% that he mentioned, I think my learned friend, Honorable Penka, used controversial in the sense that I want to say critical issues.
Right.
Where it's not about politics, it's about,
national.
And one of the things that I can see happening, one of the issues, will be the COVID budget, COVID expenses. This time, Parliament, given the numbers, will be able to interrogate how the funds for COVID were used. So, if it so happens that there has been a bit of misapplication of funds, because Parliament can unravel it, given the numbers, it's good for our democracy. I can see more good coming out of this mathematical equation than the negatives. And my last point when we're discussing this is that sometimes this state that we belong to is a primary violator of the laws of the land. And yet we all say that we're a democracy based on the rule of law. How could that be, before a general election, going to elect the president and representatives, have one part of this country not partaking in the election of the partaking in the election of the president,
Parliamentary,
but not their representative. The EC must do work. Well, yesterday I had a conversation by a certain doctor who is an indigene of Apafu, Lolobi Apafu. And he mentioned a certain CI 95 and another CI 11 something. That if this didn't happen, then CI 95 or whatever it was, remains in force. And on the basis of that, the people of Lolobi Apafu should have cast their votes for their representative. We must see the elections as soon as possible, because that could also affect the mathematics of the representation in Parliament.
Very well.
My final point is that, look, it's good for us, because we all agree that Parliament, as we've had it over the years, has been a rubber stamp. This time is not going to be a rubber stamp. It is going to have to do its work by being, exercising the check and the balance on the executive. And that will be good for democracy.
Very well. Great. Dr. Kwete, can you hear me? Right.
Yes,
so,
I hear.
Yes, we have some 5 minutes more to wrap up, so I would want to hear.
Oh, you're giving all to me. Thank you very much. Is that not what you said?
No, that wasn't what I said. So
okay.
you have a minute to wrap up for us. Carry on, please.
Obediently. Okay. I'm excited by the electorate's decision, because this thing about parliament, absolute majority, and how we've seen it used threatens the stability of our democracy. It's not yielding results. Have you seen people who say they believe in democracy, but are vehemently opposed to the political parties now going into local government? But that's what we saw last year. So there is some growing disenchantment towards the parties. I think they get the numbers all right, but probably in the larger scheme of the electorate and the numbers, they are minority. The two parties, although they are duopolies too. So it is good that the electorate has made a decision. I hope it's the death knell of this winner takes all. But as we go forward, from what my colleagues have said, I think there is a lot of wisdom in their finding a political compromise and solution to the speaker's position.
Right.
It's absolutely important for the stability of the parliament and to demonstrate goodwill. I think the two parties can work together, because nobody has been given enough numbers, to call the bluff or to misbehave anyhow.
Right.
Even if by-elections happen, the general situation will remain. Let us edge that. Let us encourage our parties to immediately open the space for some political conversations to go on. In politics, democratic politics, bargaining is also an important part of the process.
Sure.
And they should do it in good faith, so that we can have a stable fourth republic, because within the two parties, they probably have entered, certainly for MPP, a transition process. And if the president doesn't handle this situation well, for the nation to move forward, it's going to be his burden, because he could be lame ducked in his own party.
Right.
And what about the NDC? And so on. So let's encourage them. I don't believe the two should constitute teams and be talking directly, because so far in the transition experiments, they failed. They never came to any conclusion that could be implemented.
Right.
We must find mediators. I believe that there are men and women with experience in bargaining, in trading off, and so on, the global experience that could really move us forward.
Sure, thank you.
And this is important that it's done in earnest.
Very well. Thank you so much, Dr. Akwete. Let me come to you, Dr. Dramani. Your concluding remarks, quickly.
Yes, my concluding remarks are, look, in the interest...
I support everything I've said. I mean, that's all.
Yes, I support everything that that my good friend has said.
Are you a Democrat?
Yes, in the interest of their own self-preservation, I think they need to ensure that, we don't toy with this word compromise and dialogue, and as Dr. Akwete said, bargaining.
Right.
Elections in this country are decided not by the core NDC or the core MPP supporters. Elections are decided by those who are in the middle. And I think they have clearly shown that they don't like what's going on.
Right.
And this, if Parliament will be a very good test.
Right, the beginning of good times, hopefully, in parliamentary democracy. Colonel Festus Obwaji, your conclusion.
Well, now I take Dr. Akwete's advice and associate myself.
You have nothing useful to add, as we say.
Made by my colleagues.
Very well. Thank you. On that note, yes, on that note, let me quickly say this. Colonel Festus Obwaji has this book out. It's the Ghana Voter Registration 2020, Dynamics and Risks of Political Contestation in an Emerging Democracy. I think you should try and get one. Colonel, where can we get copies?
Kingdom Books, Legon, Airport Shell, Ghana Armed Forces Shop, for now.
Very well.
Another leading...
Legon Bookshop, University of Ghana. What about that?
Legon, that's right.
Sure.
That's what I mean.
Very well. So that is it. The Ghana Voter Registration 2020, Dynamics and Risks of Political Contestation in an Emerging Democracy by Colonel Festus B. Obwaji, retired. You should grab one. It will give you a great deal of information in there. And so this is where we draw the curtains on our show this morning. We do say a big thank you to you, our viewers, our listeners, but also our panelists. On Zoom, we had Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, Executive Director of IDEC. We also had Mr. Pemka, Deputy Attorney General. In the studio, we had Dr. Rashid Dramani, Executive Director of ASAPA, and Colonel Festus Obwaji, a security analyst. And say thank you once again. We will be back here same time next week. Until then, do have yourselves a very good weekend. Stay safe and happy Christmas. Merry Christmas, and do enjoy the holidays. Indeed. We'll see you here next week. Bye-bye. I forgot about Christmas.